right, 6 a.m. Central African time. A very good morning indeed. Thank you for choosing Eswatini TV Kusile breakfast show to start your day. My name is Sifiso Ngumalo. I have a very important co-host today, the guy that is too often mistaken for Sifiso Ngumalo on the outside. So, kunjani mnguni? Now we're doing very well, cannot complain. Ngiyeva lo ukuthi kunetipatch dam lo hla uthi kollega la siveni semaswati uma sithi nje singiphala okuncane.
Cha siyadibana naberengini vele bathi awu siyabonga nami ke but ke ngindawo bese ngenda njani phela under the assumption the umbrella kunjalo masotla mahle asisele thuba sivusele mnguni sivusele nababukele emakhaya thuba lelihle nje uMoshito ngisapho kancane libito lami I'll be co-hosting today Kusile breakfast show. There's so many to look into, but my key focus today will be on the news and siyathi ke indzaba lethamba phambili ngokuthi silo inkosi umswati wesithathu sikhiphe nje simemetelo lesimnanzi cool. Now we are diva sifiso ke ngubona ejimini nawe. Now diva mamasela ngathi aqinile. Yaqala 18 rather Saturday yaqala kubuthwa kwemasotsha ungavela nawe enkundleni yangakakho hulumende umbutho lomkhulu hulumende mashikilesana 3-star the army commander uyivetile ngizabe ukuthi kutabe kurecruitwa emasotsha over starting this weekend and nelist seyiphumile ke yona ukuthi now diva ngathi uqinile
ngabe sengenda umona amasombuka nangemambala vele ngahamba ngiyawuhlabana le emasotsheni. I can tell you just now I can easily win.
Okay.
I can make it.
My push-ups ready.
I can do 200 push-ups in a row.
Right.
It's child's play to me. But njengoba nje khwala sibambe khona live lenkosi libandi. Nakhona la ubambe khona kufuna ukuthi ubambe qine ngakhona so live silibambisa ngala thina. Batalibambisa ngale sibafisela inhlanhla labaya khona September ukuthi konke lokutawendeka ngebuqotho. Those who will be recruited will have deserved to be recruited. Otherwise, it is a good morning once again. Today we want to pause on one of the pillars of the kingdom's economy, the banking sector, the First National Bank Eswatini, which has released its 2024-2025 financial results. It has posted a profit of 268.8 million emalangeni. At first glance, the number is unchanged from the previous year, but behind it lies a story of resilience, of heavy investment in people as well as technology, and a clear bet on long-term growth. We want to explore this morning the journey from a modest 890 million emalangeni profit back in 1995 to today's billions in assets, and ask the question, what does it take to remain the leading financial institution in the country? Even in a volatile environment, that becomes key. But we'll also bring you perspective on how regulatory shifts, digital transformation, as well as corporate social investments are all shaping not just FNB's outlook, but the financial landscape as a whole. At the heart of it all, the question on sustainability. Can this trajectory hold? And what does it mean for the ordinary customer and the wider economy? That conversation at 6:30 this morning with the Chief Executive, Thokozani TK Dlamini of FNB. It looks to be a candid conversation. You do not want to miss it. 6:30 a.m. for the 10 minutes at 6:30 a.m. we'll be in conversation with Thokozani. Otherwise, it's a good morning indeed.
Right, Sifiso, and letinye je umbukele utawati ukuthi sitabe sinato indzaba, the first bulletin of this morning and also the second bulletin at 7 o'clock. We're starting just after our introduction, we're breaking the ice and also making sure that we give you and keep you abreast with what is happening in the world, and especially naskuluma about what is happening in the world. What is interesting for me is that the country of Malawi is going for elections today, starting today. It's about 7.2 million people that have registered to vote, and the Kingdom of Eswatini sent a delegation to go and observe, led by, and we know that His Majesty King Eswatini III is the incoming chair of SADC organ troika on politics and sustainability. So what happens is that umhlonishwa waThemba Masuku ukona khona uhola ke lelibandla lelitabe li election observers emissions. Ke sakhuluma naye nje kuva ukuthi ingabe simo sinjani khona eMalawi, wasivetela ukuthi they spoken to some of leti inhlangano letitsite labafike bakhulumisana nato ikakhulukathi lamacembe epolitiki kuva ukuthi ingabe is it going to be a free and fair election khona even naseMalawi.
Yeah. 4 minutes after 6. That's an interesting story indeed. And we are aware that His Majesty the King has released a statement on the eve of this actual day that he has just spoken on, just calling for peaceful elections. You know, that they should take a leaf from how we conduct our elections here in the Kingdom of Eswatini. So just a really, really beautiful, recommendations as well as advice from His Majesty the King as they take to the polls. It's 5 minutes after 6. Sinetindzaba tetfu tesiswati nasaniboy masombuka masibuye market.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Seven minutes past 6 ngwane lomuhla sikuvusele sikwamule kunathi indzaba tekucala telisuku kulolu hlelo Kusile breakfast show ndifuna umsawati ethome lamba phambili Eswatini TV sibuka semaswati lami libito ngusane boy ngwakangcona singene kito tindzaba ingonyama silo inkosi umswati wesithathu esigabeni sayo ingonyama sekungena ekubeni ngusihlalo weliphiko lelibuke ete kuvikela kaSadak iSadak Troika ithi ke inelethemba lokuthi ngemuva kulukhetho lamengameli lolutawubanjelwa elangeni lalomuhla eMalawi leliveke litawuchubeka libe nekuthula nekusimama ngonyama ke iniketeke siva saseMalawi siqiniseko sokuthi iSadak itawuchubeka nekwesekela ke lelalive lisaba ke nelukhetho noma ke selengcile ngonyama imema ke bonke bantu laba vumelekile ukuthi bavote ukuthi baphume ngetinkani bayawakha ke live labo siloke sicela ke nebaholi bamacembe epolitiki nebalandzeli babo ukuthi bemukele imiphumela yalolukhetho nemiphumela ke nayitawuveta ke lokufuna ke sive ukuthi nakunekukhala bonke ke bantu abalandzele ke umthetho ngonyama ithi emave onke kaSadak alifisela ke lokuhle kodwa livele eMalawi lisabamba ke lukhetho njengemgomo ke welukhetho lenhlangano yakaSadak iSadak Principles and Guidelines Governing Democratic Elections ngonyama ke ithumele ke libandla leliyawubuka ukuthi lichubeka kanjani lukhetho eMalawi lelibandla ke liholwa ngomhlonishwa Themba Masuku. Iphinda Nkulu umhlonishwa Kusile Dladla uyomelela ke emakhosi eliveni nelive emsebentini wekufihla ke indlovukazi yebukhosi besive semashanti eveni leGhana. Umhlonishwa Kusile Dladla uthi ke lamave lamabili kakhulukati bona ke bukhosi bemashanti buyathelelana tindzabeni tekugcina nekulondolozwa kwamasiko.
Liphilani Mvunangulu umhlonishwa Kusile Dladla lisuke lesikhumulweni setindiza iKing Mswati the 3rd International Airport ngemsombuluko emini tomelela emakhosi nelive emsebentini wekufihla ngendlela ekufihla emachawe state funeral wendlovukazi yesive sema-Ashanti eveni leGhana Nana Konadu Yadom wesithathu. Liphilani Mvunangulu ke lihamba nemthane nkosi Khuhlapi sikhulu Ndzabangulu Simelane nendvuna yetiko letinkhundla nekutfutfukiswa kwato umhlonishwa Sikhumbuzo Dlamini kanti wetfulile betindzaba ngalo msebenzi.
Ingonyama yamaswati isithuma eGhana lapho bekhona khona ungasikudze yocinisa buhlobo nele kingdom yama-Ashanti babeseke bekunene sebahlelwa lifu lelimnyama lapho indlovukazi yakhona ibese iyahamba emhlabeni kepha-ke ihambe seyikhulile sena 98 weminyaka. Kusho ukuthi uNkulunkulu bekayigcinile sonke lesikhathi. So seyihambile-ke ithi-ke kunene asambe sohlanganisa emehlo nabo ngoba phela lobuhlobo bese bakhiwe bucinile. And uma ubuka nalomlandvo lokudlalwa ngiyo le ndlovukazi lebuse waze umnakabo wathi umathi 67 wase uthathe ematomso umnika yona. Lena-ke kula sive sema-Ashanti khona uhamba kule line labomake kubusa ngalapha ngakubomake. So lona nje lokumfana walomake lowa bekabusa ngaleso sikhathi wathatha lona lesashonile namhla bese badlala irole kuba indlovukazi u-advisor lona lothethe.
Le ndlovukazi yesive sema-Ashanti ibe ihlahlandlela lokugcina nokulondolodwa kwamasiko alesive, kanti lo msebenzi wokumfihla utawuqala sukela ngeMsombuluko uchubeke iviki lonke njengoba abaholi nalabakhulu kumave lehlukene batawuba ingcenye yokufihla leli chawe. Lo bikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza eKing Mswati III International Airport.
Ingonyama seyibusise ukuthi kuqale umsebenzi wokubuthwa kwamasotsha ngemgcibelo wamhlati nge-21 kulenyanga leSetulo. Lokungumsebenzi lotawuchutshwa ngumbutho wetekuvikela etingundleni. Lokho kuvetwe ngumbutho ohashukile emhlanganweni nebetindzaba ngeMsombuluko.
Lalela sikutshela tindzaba lethu enkosini. Sana uthokandaba labativako kuyawujoyina embuthweni wasemasotsheni abaphelele etinkundleni tabo magumbi lamane livela kangwane baphelele netigcebhezane tabo tebuve kusuka eminyakeni lelishumi nesiphohlongo kuyawufika eminyakeni lengemashumi lamathathu nesihlanu baphelele etinkundleni tabo hayi endlungulu yasemasotsheni. Usho njalo umswati lomnyama kulabalithu londungandaba wakithi wasembelebeleni ngulondungandaba nemambalangani wakithi wasemambondweni mswati khawula labantu ngemvimbelo bokhala abantu nangemnyatheliso uyatibona nemambalana athi inhloko temadunathi yakunga ticunga nemambala edlamini besethi kuye tiyabikelana kuye kwaqunga nemambala atabonye kwasekazulu uhohone nemambala ngolufunga kulabemukabo nemambala belifunga bengunkulu nemaswati umkhokha nemambala lobhunyele bafana basemasotsheni kugunle mbontho abantu batanqanisa abanqanise balithini emagumeni abonini nemambala amswati ngibevile bahitela bathi ngumagodolwane ingabe bona baphana kangakanani emagumeni abonini wena waphakathi wena waphakathi.
Umphathi wemasotsha amashikilisana Fakudze uncuse emalunga lombutho latabe asebenta lo msebenzi wemakhosi nesive kuthi bawubambe ngato totimbili lo msebenzi.
Siyethemba lo msebenzi njengoba uwengwenyama welive wonke umuntu utawuhlonipha ngabe lisotsha ngabe akasilo utawukhona ukuhlonipha and siyethemba ukuthi kusukela namuhla kutawuphela ukuhamba ushayela abantu ucingo nomume emagedeni masosha ucelela abantwana lesimemetelo lesi sitomemetela lokubuthwa lisotsha lelitivako noma lijaha noma intombazane lelitivako ukuthi ilungele kuyembuluzi akusiko-ke ukuthi kumbe kuyofuna indzawo yesikolo ukuthi utawuhamba nemtali kufuneka lo muntu atendele yena lesinqumo akaphekeletelwa utendela lesinqumo evele ukuthi utayikhona yini lokuba lisotsha.
Lokubuthwa kwemasotsha kutawuqala kule mphela-somvo lesiya kuyo mhlati nge-20 kuyinyanga leSetulo enkhundleni yasemafutheni nasekushaya insimbi yesibili Ntsambama kude kube ngumhlati nge-24 enyangeni yeLweti ngayo insimbi yesibili Ntsambama enkhundleni yaseMbabane West kanti lolunye luhlala lokubuthwa kwemasotsha ngekusho kwalombutho lutawubuye lumenyetelwe. Lobikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza eNokwane.
Intwinetiko letinkundla mhlonishwa Sikhumbuzo Dlamini ithi kuhle ukuthi emalunga enkundla iconze indzaba yokuhlelwa kwemali emaphakelo ahulumende lesingathi ke phecelezi budget. Nduna ke ithi ke kuconza ukuhlelembiswa kwemali ngiko lokutawufaka isandla ekutheni kuthuthuke tinkundla nemimango. Nduna ke ikhulumele emhlanganweni lapho bekunelitiko letisebenti tembuso belitiko letekuhlela umnotho kanye ke nemalunga enkundla esifundza saselibonjeni.
Kude amalunga etinkundla esifundza saselibonjeni abenelwati ukuthi ahlelwa njani emaphakelo elive nekuthi imali lephakelwako ibhekiswaphi. Litiko letinkundla lihlangene nabosopolitiki baselibonjeni kutawubachazela kabanti ngekuhlelwa kwemaphakelo.
We are happy ukuthi isebenti tasetinkundleni lofaka kathi inkundla bo-MP wokucobo sebatawuqonza ngekuthi yini emaphakelo. Lokho ke kuyanda ukuthi basakhuluma basasebenta bakhone ukuplana kahle baplanele lapho labathunywe khona.
Induna ilitiko letisebenti tembuso umhlonishwa Mabulala Maseko uthi lokunye lokwenta ukuthi ingabonakali inchubekela phambili yelive kuba khona kwalabo labagangako bebe imali yahulumende.
Emuva besingacela ke vele ukuthi nakhona senta lama-projects asibukene ema-projects la tasikicitela hayi nje i-project ukuthi ngobe ilula yona ngisoza ngiyathi ukuthi nangifakile ngishaya itikele ngitambo bayabasho njalo batambona singasebenza kanti nje i-glory esikhashanyana emva kwesikhathi utakhaza sisebenza.
Themba Msibi umphathi wesifundza saselibonjeni uthi uhulumende yakayisukumele etulu indzaba yenkhohlakalo.
Live libulawa corruption. Ngilokhu umuntu abe anti-corruption kube soloko enziwa nakuphenya kushayana kuye kulomunye kufuna lomunye kukhohle kubanjwa nje namuntu kodwa niyaphinda nifuna kukampela nifuna kubuyela inehlule dismal i-corruption.
Lilunga lephalamende lenkundla yaseligongolweni umhlonishwa Joseph Soza lithumise litiko ngalomhlangano lathi usitsingo lesikhulu kude amalunga akhone kwenta umsebenzi wawo.
Alile uhulumende sosebenza khona lokho asingakuthatheli phansi. Lesingamanye sicele ukuthi umhlonishwa Tulwena RA next time sebasivakahlelele tinkundleni laba baka budget. Batosho sisabhithani ngenyalo fakayo ukuthi nini basesigongolweni nifuna ini.
Emalunga etinkundla acelile ukuthi kuphindze kube khona lomunye umhlangano lofana nalona. Ubika Thembelihle Magutshwa #.
Sihlalo welikomiti ke lelibuke kulungisa tingcinamba letibhekene nelitiko letempilo lekuyinduna yelitiko letemabhizinisi umhlonishwa Mancoba Khumalo ithi ke bakuthokotele noma ke bathokotele ngelinani lemaphilisi nemithi lekhona esibhedlela sakaHlatsi ngekwetinombolo ke linani lemaphilisi nemithi lelikhona kulesibhedlela loku 85%. Khumalo bekhuluma ngesikhathi lelikomiti ke livakashele esibhedlela sahulumende kaHlatsi kuyobuka indlela lesisebenza ngayo.
Sibhedlela sakaHlatsi ngisona sibhedlela lesikhulu eshiselweni ngekusho kwembiko lesibhedlela ngeminyaka sinakasive lesengcako ku-200,000 buningi lokulinganisela ku-19% welinani labantu labakhona eveni. Sihlalo welikomiti lelibukete indzaba tempilo lokuyindvuna yelitiko letemabhizinisi umhlonishwa Mancoba Khumalo kanye nelisekela lakhe lokuyindvuna yelitiko letemidlalo emasiko kanye nendzaba tensha umhlonishwa Bongani Nzima bathe njengoba sebatibonile tidzingo kanye nalokuhle lokwentiwa ngilesibhedlela batawusisekela ngemali ledzingekile nempahla yekusebenta kubala kulokunye.
Nyalo nje basitekela ukuthi seba 85% imithi labanayo which is really info lenhle kakhulu lesicela kuyibonga kakhulu etikweni la health ngoba le program labayisebenzisile iyakhombisa ukuthi letinye ibhedlela efana kaHlatsi seyiyasebenza. Sibonile ke ukuthi i-system lekuthiwa i-MLS sebavele basebenzisa yona yebo basanza kuqala kuyisebenzisa kepha ke seyicalile iyabaniketa indlela ukuthi bakhona lokumonitor lemithi lengenako nale lekhona esitokweni nalephumako. Konke lokhu ke kusitshela ukuthi uma ngabe lelitiko laka health litawuqhubeka lente lokhu lelikwentako ikakhulu baka Central Medical Stores tibhedlela tonke titawugcina tifika mhlambe kwezinga lelikhona lapha kaHlatsi.
I-customer care yabo yinhle kakhulu siyabona kunemishina leminye lapha la khona i-patient vele ite ithola nje SMS vele ite ithathele amaphilisi kulomshina awuloko kuyasijabulisa kakhulu vele kusho silive liyathuthuka bayasebenza bayatimisela kodwa ke vele kukhona lokuhle bakhinyabeta lokuthi lo msebenzi songetulu kwemandla kunetikhala letishodako letinye takhona ti very key ukwanza kusibo dokotela labatsite mhlawumbe lama specialist esikhumba ngiyabekisa njengaye nawo labambalile baphindze babala nabonesi ukuthi nabonesi nabo bayashoda kungako lamanye emawadi ukhanye sebawabhica netindlela tingakafanele mhlawumbe ukuthi ngabe sethi babhicekile ngenxa yokuthi vele staff sakhona siyashoda.
Kumncintiswano we-Customer Satisfaction Survey logcine kubanjwa ngomnyaka wa-2023, sibhedlela sahulumende kaHlatsi sahlala esicongweni nakubukwa ibhedlela liphatha kahle sive lapha eveni kwendlula lapho saba nginombolo 2 kulo mncintiswano nasicatsaniswa naletinye ibhedlela kuSADC. Buholi lobukhona buthi solobambelele ekuphatheni kahle sive naside kutawuthola lusito lwetempilo. Njengoba njalo ngemva kwetinyanga letintsatfu balonda licwaningo lwekoleka imivo yesive ngendlela lesiphatheka ngayo kulesibhedlela. Kubika Thando kuhle Mdluli, Hlatsi.
Maphanelo omkhulu wetiko letekuvakasha nemvelo Khangeziwe Mabuza uthi ngekubanjiswa ngomhlahlangene live lisahamba kahle tinhlelweni tekumelana nemithelela eguquka kwesimo selitulu. Mabuza bekakhuluma emhlanganweni wekubuketa umgomo welive wekumelana nemithelela weguquka kwesimo selitulu.
Litiko letekuvakasha nemvelo libambe umhlangano netinhlangothi letahlukene kubuketa umgomo welive wetinhlelo tekunciphisa tinfutfu letigcine tilimata elidvadvasi lelivikele sibhakabhaka nemithele eguquka kwesimo selitulu phecelezi nationally determined contributions. Maphanelo omkhulu kulelitiko Khangeziwe Mabuza uthi live lisahamba kahle ngetinhlelo nekutsi-ke mhlabuhlangene uyachubeka uyalesekela live.
Mhlabuhlangene usibambisile ngemali wasitholela imali sakhona ukuthi sicashe bochwepheshe lebe basisita bahamba bangena la tinhlangothini basitholela le information kodwa ke sicela nekusho ukuthi siyaticapha silivela kangwanele ukuthi inqumbi yalomsebenzi ikakhulu lokucaphiya kakhulu kube ngawe emaswati lasatshengisile ukuthi likhono sekanalo lekuthi angatendela lo msebenzi. Yebo kona kusho ukuthi sekuphelele tikhala tisesekhona sisetawuchubeka sincongcose sicelele ukuthi sisithakale. Kodwa nje siyabonga kakhulu lokuthi sekukhona la sibona khona nathi ukuthi cha selive siyathuthuka siyakhona lokuthi sihlanganise tinombolo kugcine kuphumile into lemphathekako lesingayibhoda kamhlabuhlangene.
Lobukela ihhovisi lakamhlaba letentutfuko Hendrik Franklin uthi live laseswatini tinhlelo ntalo lisahamba kahle nangemambala.
UNDP has been working hand in hand with the Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs to make sure that the platforms are there, to support the process, recruiting consultants that have done the technical work. A lot of the work has been done by national experts and institutions.
Uthi-ke live laseswatini njengokusho kwakhe emhlabuhlangene liyakhona kuhambisana nemigomo yakamhlaba lekhutsata ngibanzakanya kwabomake bamfula basha nalabakhubatekile etinhlelweni tekumelana nemithela eguquka kwesimo selitulu. Lo mhlangano kutawuhlanganisa umbiko welive wesithafu lotawumikiswa kamhlabuhlangene ocacisako ukuthi live laseswatini selimephi ngetinhlelo tekunciphisa tinfutfu letigcine tilimete elidvadvasi lelivikele sibhakabhaka nekutsi-ke live lifuna ukuthi libheke tinhlelo ntalo. Lobikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza eMbabane.
Ngemva kokuthi inhlangano yabosomabhizinisi ibusiness Eswatini ivakalise ukukhathatheka kwayo ngenhloso yekuvala noma-ke kuvala kokuthi inkampani icashe tisebenzi icashele lenye phecelezi triangular employment ukuthi itawubanga ukuthi kulahleke imisebenzi lengetulu kwa-22,000. Induna yelitiko letisebenzi umhlonishwa Phila Buthelezi seyichaze kabanti-ke ngemthetho losakhankanywa i-Employment Bill. Induna-ke ithi uhulumende angeke ashintshe imithetho ngenhloso yokucekela phansi tinkampani nesive.
Nasikhuluma kule triangular form of employment sikhuluma ngama-labor brokers, asikhulumi ngama-subcontractors. Kumbe inkulumo le yayikhona nayicalwa le bill kodwa kule bill leseyisephalamende ayikho i-clause levala kusebenza kwama-subcontractors. Atawuchubeka abe khona and fortunately enough lekuboshukela tinkampani ntemoba kude labacashwe ngama-labor brokers. Le bill seeks to abolish ama-labor brokers lapho khona kunamaswati lacashiwe etitolo letitsengisa kudla letinengi ema-supermarket lamakhulu lengengwasho ngamagama tinkampani tekuchumana letinkulu ticashe amaswati ngama-labor brokers tinkampani tetimpahla letinengi titolo tetimpahla letinengi ticashe amaswati ngama-labor brokers lekubonakele njengoba yakureza iParliament yaba nema-resolutions lamabili ukuthi kunyathele amalungelo ezisebenzi because lo muntu leliswati lalisebenza khona akusiko kalolo licashile licashwe ngulomunye ulibolekise lo so kulula ukuthi nalithi liveta kungaphatheki kahle kwalo lalisebenzela khona noma kunyatheleka noma kungabhadaleki kahle avele atshele lo yakunene lo labor broker ukuthi thatha lo muntu wakho angimtsi uvela ulahleke kanjalo umsebenzi alesilo protected leliswati lo wakha imali ngilona lo bolekisa ngale disebenzi lokubantu le nqubo yempilo akuvumi ukuthi singabolekisa ngemphefumulo lokuhle lokunye lokulethwa ngomthetho ngoba ubukela abaqashi ubukela nathi disebenzi dinzaba tako kwalokucashana ngaphandle kwale kuma labor brokers sitibonile tindzawo lapho khona kunamaswati laqasheke ngalokungesiko khona ngoba imithetho yethu bese imdzala wa1980 sinabantu labaqashwe njengama casual for imisebenzi lekumele ibe seasonal or ibe long term ngoba nyalo lo mthetho sokuthi ngeke umqashi womuntu abe casual for longer than 24 hours in a week kodwa nyalo sinezisebenzi leticashwe Monday to Friday kuthiwa ama casual disebenza 8 hours a day uto protector leto disebenzi lona mthetho sinebantu labaqashwe seasonal for imisebenzi lebonakala ukuthi permanent uto regulator lokho lo mthetho usichaba qashwe permanent babe entitled to onke ama benefits ngoba vele lemsebenzi labayendako iyakhomba lokho ukuthi ayipheli ngekushintsha kwesizini kukunyathela lelungelo lesisebenzi na utaliqasha 11 wetinyanga ulidendeleka ka 12 hayi ngoba ungalidzingi but ngoba kubalekela kuliqasha permanent.
Libandla libuke kusebenta kwetinhlangothi letisebenta ngemali letingesiwo kwemabhange e-Financial Services Regulatory Authority sethuthukise lithulusi letebuciko letawusita ekutheni ikhona-ke kubuka indlela letinhlangothi letisebenta ngayo ngesikhathi lesiphuthumako i-Bank Supervision Version 5 labekade-ke ameleke umphathi waleli bandla Nxamiso Njalinjali Ezama Dlamini uthi leli thulusi tathuthukisa indlela lababuka ngayo indlela yekusebenta kwaletinhlangothi.
Lithulusi leku-supervisor lesilibita nga-BSA version 5 utasenda ukuthi siphuphuke kule ndlela besisupervisor ngayo sibe nema-insights langetudlwana latasenda ukuthi sikhone kubona ema-risk ngelicopheleni leselikhulile kunalo BSA version 4 besemsebenzisa ngaphambilini.
Nxamiso Mavuso lobuke tebuciko ka-FSRA uyachaza ukuthi leli thulusi litawusebenta kanjani.
Le version lesiyilonchako it does allow ukuthi sikhone kubona letinkinga lama issues or lama risk on time and then we make the necessary interventions which was currently an area lebesingasiko effective kiyo and also nema FSPs now bokhanza ukuthi sometimes lokusubmit le information it's a burden to them. So the system it does allow us to simplify the info, bakhone kuba compliant in terms of submitting lama reports, and also bad in areas where they're not doing very well in real time.
I-FSRA ibuke kusebenta kwetinhlangothi letisebenta ngemali letingesiwo emabhange letibalelwa ku-400. Lobika kwaNelisiwe Ndlangamandla nginavuma Inkosi Nzinisa ezulwini.
Inkantolo yamacala lendlulisiwe i-Supreme Court of Appeal ithi akuhlanganiswe onke amacala lathinta umphathi we-Eswatini Met Peter Samora Simelane kanye nenkampani ye-Eswatini Met lesembi kwenkantolo njengaloku amanyendi kude kuvimbeke ukuthi atekwe maqosinqozi lokhu kwendekeke ngemsombuluko ngesikhathi bekumelekele inkantolo ilalele isicelo saSimelane kule nkantolo lapho ke afuna le nkantolo ibukete kabusha isijubo selijaji lenkantolo lenkulu Mamsi Dlamini sekuthi Simelane kanyeke nasihlalo waleli bandla libacondzisi Semi Dlamini abakhweshe ekwendeni imisebenzi yabo eSwatini Med. Dasela lomsangatho Fortune Ndlangamandla ihlanganiseke nalombiko kanye nembiko lapho khona umbuso ke uphikise ke sicelo sekubuketwa kabusha kwesijubo samanje lomkhulu wakaManzini David Khumalo lesithi abendluliselwe emaveni lakubo noma ke eveni lakubo bomsolo ecaleni lekudubula ke babulale umhlabeleli wetingoma te-hip hop Kenan aka Forbes kanye nemngane wakhe lobeka mphekela wabosaziwayo noma ke lobeka Thibelo Tips Motswana. Salibukela nomsakatho Thombe Eswatini TV sibuka samaswati esikhathi manje sitamkela nathi indzaba temidlalo umqeqeshi welikhethelo lesive lebantombazane labangaphansi kweminyaka lengama-20 ibudzala athi uDludlu uthi-ke seba ulungele umdlalo wabo neNingizimu Afrika wekulungela imave latongenela indzebe yemhlaba. Dludlu bekakhuluma nebetindzaba nale licembu lelitilolongako-ke kalobamba. Manje kunathi iCOSAFA under 17 seliphumelele leSwatini emidlalweni yeAFCON under 17 COSAFA qualifiers ngemuva kokukhala phansi kuMozambique ngemagoli lamane ecanzeni. Levele Eswatini ke emidlalweni lemithathu ledlaliwe likhala phansi emahlandla lamabili ladlala ngekulingana kanye. Lokusho ke ukuthi licedzekele imidlalo ngaphandle kokunqoba namunye nje umdlalo. Ndingako masotha amahle indzaba eseniphathele tona telusuku tekucala la ehlelweni Kusile breakfast show kulesikhathi manje. We shall take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Sifiso Nxumalo chats to F&B Eswatini CEO Thokozani TK Dlamini.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience. I know.
It's risky, but I've done it several times.
Guys, bafana bebola barong. Agiwa kakhona.
Machari akhona basafaka snake neokhobe babelele.
but my friends can go to hell.
To this day, I've never seen that man.
You don't know him like I do. I know it's petty.
I don't know what it is, but I can jump. Well, okay, yes, I've seen handcuffs where they were not supposed to be.
Right, welcome back. It's 35 minutes after 6. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show. This is the Monday edition. FNB Eswatini has once again demonstrated why it remains the country's leading financial institution, posting a profit of 268.8 million for the 2024-2025 financial year. Now, the figure may mirror last year's numbers, but it tells a deeper story this time around, one of resilience, strategic investment, as well as a steady hand at the helm. Now, from its early days in 1995, just a year after I was born, with profits of less than 1 million emalangeni to today's multi-billion rand, that's their balance sheet. FNB's journey now reflects consistency, adaptability, as well as a clear commitment to growth. What stands out in these results is the deliberate choices, investing in people, advancing technology, as well as ensuring meaningful impact in the community. Let's expand on this conversation now with the Chief Executive of FNB Eswatini, Thokozani TK Dlamini, who's in studio with me. Ngosi, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. You're looking dapper, by the way.
Morning, Mnguni. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really love the colors there. Let's talk about this interesting development, because one thing that I've noticed is that you have led FNB through a period with which is very competition intensified, as well as the operating system. It sort of remains uncertain, so to speak. And yet the bank still delivered a 268.8 million emalangeni. How do you sum up this performance?
Well, to me, Mnguni, it basically means that the bank is resilient. When you speak about the performance, headwinds, part of those are in the environment. We have to go through this payments modernization journey, and part of it meant that we had to invest some millions in making sure that we modernize our systems. Nationally, we've got the Eswatini National Payment Switch project, which is also part of the national payments modernization journey. So despite those, though, we were able to make sure that we remain resilient, which is the results that we see. So for us, we are humbled by that.
What would you say this signals about the institution's positioning in the market?
Well, to me, us investing in our people and also investing in the systems, it means that we are investing to continue forward for the next 30 years as well.
And then in your presentation, I saw your presentation through a friend who shared it in a group, by the way. There's a couple of my friends who are in a WhatsApp group, and we like to talk development. And, you know, part of the headlines last week was this particular one. And your presentation highlighted an investment of 5.4 million emalangeni into corporate social responsibility project.
Yeah.
You know, this speaks to a philosophy that profitability is not about what social impact alone, but what drives FNB Eswatini when it comes to the commitment to such resources, as well as how do you measure the broader return for the communities that you serve?
Yeah. So that one, Mnguni, is very, very important. I think we keep saying Gotsi Stindile Eswatini. That's not just a motto. Vele Stindile Eswatini sinzao. And part of that means, Kutsi, we have to invest in the communities that we're in. So yes, 5.48 million that we've invested. Part of that goes towards E-Entrepreneur of the Year Awards, which is basically focused on making sure that we recognize the SMEs nationally. And this year, we went over and above just looking at the national awards. We're also running regional awards, which then build up to the national awards. On top of that, we were able to put in some money into Bapalali Red Cross. Part of the initiatives that they had to look at is something that happened in January, where there was some disaster, and we had to make sure that we assist in making sure that we help out the families there. And for us, that is very important. And the last one that I can mention as well is Imoya Center, which is close to our head office. We invested some money there to help with kids with uniform and other necessities that are required for schools.
Yeah.
So for us, doing that makes sure that we are part and parcel of the communities that we live in, where our clients come from as well. And that shows that to us, it's important that we uplift the communities that we are in.
And, you know, without maybe stepping on the other developments that you have just mentioned, but I'm such a big fan of the work that you do with SEDCO when it comes to the Entrepreneur Awards as well as the Ministry of Commerce, because, you know, they highlighted that our country's GDP, over 90% of it, the contribution is from the MSMEs. And indeed, they are the lifeblood of our economy in Eswatini. You also drew attention to the balance between men and women. And it's a conversation, an age-old conversation around the world. And it's important that we still take notice of it. It is something that many businesses still aspire to, funny enough, but they have not achieved it all. And yet you guys have achieved it. Talk to me about that balance for you as the FNB. Why is it important?
For us, it's very important. That fits into diversity. With diversity comes the strength of an organization. Let me just start by saying that Eswatini FNB has over 95% of its staff Maswati. I think that's the first one, because we believe in the resources and the strength of the people Bala Eswatini. And then secondly, if you look at our leadership, at the top and at the bottom, it's mixed. Which is very, very important. In our EXCO, we currently have a 50-50 split when it comes to EXCO. We've introduced earlier this year Mrs. Veronica Njalinjali, who's our Chief People Officer. We introduced Mrs. Kusile Dlamini, who's our Chief Marketing Officer. And just a few days ago, we introduced our Chief Operating Officer, the first female Chief Operating Officer, Mrs. Thandeka Dlamini. So for us, that demonstrates that we're intentional about making sure that we balance out from a diversity perspective. We believe in both the females and males in our organization.
Yeah, and indeed, you really do just demonstrate it beyond it being just a motto. Perhaps for the viewer, when Mr. Dlamini came to the studio this morning, he came with a man and a woman. So you do really see that it's being demonstrated. It's not just something that he speaks of. I want us to talk about, as we cap off our conversation, by the way, the profit figure. It matches that of the previous year. And you've been clear about the pressures of regulatory projects as well as compliance changes. How have these regulatory requirements shaped your performance?
I think that's a very important one. So I did mention that part of the headwinds was part of being involved in payments modernization projects. That is being led by our regulator. I mentioned the Eswatini National Payment Switch, which is very important. I think this is being done not only by Eswatini. I think regionally as well, we are seeing all of the different countries making sure that they are modernizing their payments infrastructure, which is very important because it is the backbone of running the economy in each jurisdiction. So for us, we're involved in the Eswatini Payment Switch. It was currently in phase 1 of it, which involves fast payments, making sure that you include not only the banks, but you also include all of the other payment stakeholders, like the MNOs, which is your mobile network operators. It's important because then you are able to capture all of the different funds flows within the country. So we're involved in that and we're investing in that. It's very important that we invest in that to make sure that the stability of the national payment system, like Eswatini, continues and it encourages the economy to grow.
Perhaps something else that wasn't initially part of our conversation, I hear that the term investing in people is something that you're really passionate about. And I would be remiss if I do not allow us to have this conversation. Just briefly, we did see you sponsor golf once again, and what was a successful tournament. Really beautiful. I was there. I watched a couple of the pro golfers myself. I even saw you tee off from the tee box. You know, speak on that as you continue to invest, and you speak of diversity. You don't only invest on people in the communities, but sports as well.
Yeah. I did speak about us investing in EYA, which is focused on SMEs. We spoke about assisting with disaster management through Bapalali And I spoke about Moya Center investing in children for uniforms. But for us, part of the intention as well is to make sure that we develop sport in the country. And for us, the key area that we focus on, one of the key areas that we focus on is golf through the FNB Golf Challenge. We will continue to sponsor that project. And the focus area currently, speaking to the Eswatini Professional Golfers Association and the Golf Union, is to make sure that we now also switch our attention to development at grassroots level. So you'll see more and more of that. And that is key to making sure that we develop the sport in the country from grassroots level as well.
TK, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations once again, just seeing this article right now, that FNB Eswatini has been certified as a top employer for 2025 with dual certification. Perhaps let me read it for the people at home. The bank received certification from the Top Employers Institute, a global organization based in the Netherlands that certifies companies worldwide for their human resources strategies as well as employee working conditions as well. I think that speaks to that 50-50 that you spoke about as well, which is indeed very beautiful. Chief Executive of FNB Eswatini, Thokozani Dlamini. And the conclusion is clear: investing in people, embracing innovation and contributing meaningfully to society. FNB Eswatini has once again underlined why it remains a leader in the financial sector. Thank you for your time. Let's go for a net break. We'll be back shortly.
Imagine being part of a journey that uncovers the beauty of untold stories. Get ready to be part of something epic. You don't want to be left out, and you definitely don't want to miss out. Join the journey of uncovering untold stories through art, words, and hands. O-U-T out. Well, that's poetry. Poetry. Don't blink or you'll miss it. Every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Screens on, eyes glued.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show, the Monday edition. Let's look at this now story from the United Nations, where the Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, briefing the Security Council, said that the people of the Yemen are facing an ever-growing humanitarian crisis that has left the country the third most food insecure in the world. He warned that before February next year, 1 million more Yemenis are expected to be pushed into extreme hunger, joining 17 million already struggling to feed themselves, including over 40,000 people in catastrophic conditions.
For his briefing, I now give the floor to Mr. Tom Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. President. The events of the last 2 weeks, as described by the Special Envoy, will understandably dominate discussions today on how the United Nations operates and how we engage with parties to a conflict in Yemen and beyond. And so I reiterate my full support to the Special Envoy's strenuous efforts to find a political track in and amid a complex regional picture. I will address some of those implications, but I'd first like to focus on the ever-growing humanitarian crisis plaguing the people of Yemen. Mr. President, rising food prices, security threats to our work, a collapsing economy, and persistent conflict have made Yemen the third most food insecure country on earth. Before February next year, 1 million more people are expected to be forced into extreme hunger, joining 17 million Yemenis with too little to eat. This includes more than 40,000 people in the catastrophic phase of food insecurity. 70% of households in Yemen do not have enough food to meet their daily needs. This is the highest rate ever recorded. Nearly half of the population in the country are now suffering severe food deprivation, a jump from 36% only a year ago. 1 in 3 families is experiencing moderate to severe hunger. In 1 out of 5 households, someone goes a full day and night without any food at all. I've raised this alarm here before, but this reporting confirms our and your worst fears. Mr. President, the more positive part. Despite lack of funding and a tough operating environment, humanitarians, with immense courage, have been responding to those in greatest need. In Hajj, humanitarian organizations strengthened their responses to roll back rising acute food insecurity after children died from starvation in the IDP camps. Partners scaled up vital life-saving cash support, in-kind food distribution, and hygiene kits. They restored clean water supplies, established health points to deliver essential health and nutrition support. Out of 98,000 people in urgent need of aid, 76,000 received additional support by early September, with more on the way. In Amran, support from the Yemen Humanitarian Fund allowed local partners to provide health and nutrition to 15,000 people in critical need, including at the Maswa Rural Hospital. And in Marib, UNICEF, WHO, with support again from the Yemen Humanitarian Fund, are providing nutrition through 4 hospitals, treating hundreds of severely malnourished children, pregnant women, and new mothers. Humanitarian partners have also helped more than 172,000 people affected by heavy rains and flooding, including with non-food items, shelter, hygiene kits, and clean water. I pay tribute to their dedication in such difficult circumstances, and I'm grateful for the support that we receive. But, Mr. President, while we are making some progress, it is not enough. An increasingly difficult operating environment is preventing us from reaching those in need or saving enough lives. And funding cuts are also costing lives. For example, and in addition to the food insecurity crisis, 2 million women and girls have already lost access to reproductive health services in a reality where a woman already dies every 2 hours during pregnancy. I remain gravely concerned by the continued hostilities between the parties, which have resulted in scores of casualties and damaged critical infrastructure. Airstrikes against Sana'a and Al Jauf since the last council briefing are reported to have resulted in more than 300 casualties. International humanitarian law must be respected. Civilians and civilian objects must be protected. Mr. President, in this challenging environment, the detention of another 22 United Nations staff by the Houthi de facto authorities since the 31st of August is intolerable. This is in addition to the 23 staff who were already detained, along with dozens of staff and former staff from international NGOs, civil society, and diplomatic missions. So I would reiterate the central demands that you made as a council in your statement on the 12th of September, the immediate release of all those detained by the de facto authorities, and your clear message that those delivering humanitarian aid must be protected. That arbitrary detention of now 44 UN staff, the forcible entry of UN offices, the seizure of equipment, all of that fundamentally undermines our ability to continue to deliver at scale in these locations. And as this council also called for on Friday, it is vital that all parties enable a safe and secure operating environment. Now, we have a duty to our staff to take every reasonable measure to mitigate these escalating risks that they face. And we now face tough choices about how to strike the right balance between that protection and the vital life-saving work that we do on your behalf. And so it is outrageous at a time when humanitarians are trying to serve the Yemeni people while beset by funding cuts, that our operational capacity is being further and needlessly jeopardized. Detaining staff, humanitarian staff, does not help the people of Yemen. It doesn't feed the hungry, heal the sick, nor protect those displaced by floods or fighting. UN and humanitarian personnel must be protected to do their jobs and save lives. The people of Yemen, wherever they may live, must receive the humanitarian aid that they need. They deserve a future of greater security, justice, and opportunity. So, Mr. President, I close with three simple calls to action. Firstly, the immediate release of all colleagues who are arbitrarily detained. And if you have influence, you must use it. Secondly, the return of UN compounds by security forces to ensure that humanitarian partners can do their work. And thirdly, your funding for our response to food insecurity and malnutrition. We must not allow mass hunger to define the future of Yemen. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Fletcher for his briefing.
Right, that was the briefing by the Yemen on the situation that is, undertaking there, really sad reality, and seeking for intervention from the United Nations, seeking for more aid. He did say candidly that, what they are receiving is really helping them get to a point of a bit of relief, but he did say that it's certainly not enough, and so he pleads for more. Such a sad reality. As we go for a net break, we'll be back shortly.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. Our English news now. The Deputy Prime Minister has left the Kingdom of Eswatini for Ghana to represent their Majesties at a state funeral of the late Queen Nana Konadu Yedom III of the Ashanti Kingdom. The Deputy Prime Minister says these two countries share a number of areas of bilateral cooperation.
The Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Kusile has departed the Kingdom of Eswatini through the King Mswati III International Airport to represent their Majesties and the nation at a high-profile state funeral in Ghana of the late Queen of the Ashanti Kingdom, Queen Nana Konadu Yedom III. The Deputy Prime Minister was accompanied by Prince Kuhlapi, Chief Nzabangulu Smelane, and the Honorable Minister of Tingundla Administration and Development, Zikhumbuzo Dlamini. Upon her departure, she addressed the media.
Ingonyama yamaswati isiphuma eGhana lapho bekhona khona ungasikudze yocinisa buhlobo nele kingdom yama Ashanti. Babeseke bekunene sebahlelwa lifu lelimnyama lapho indlovukazi yakhona ibese iyahamba emhlabeni. Kepha-ke ihambe seyikhulile sena 98 weminyaka. Kusho ukuthi uNkulunkulu bekayigcinile sonke lesikhathi. So seyihambile-ke ithi-ke kunene asambe sohlanganisa emehlo nabo ngoba phela lobuhlobo bese bakhiwe buqinile.
The funeral is expected to draw leaders and dignitaries from across the African continent and beyond as the Ashanti nation bids farewell to its late queen, porting Samgalsiwe Khoza King Mswati III International Airport.
His Majesty King Mswati III has commanded the commencement of the Umbutfo Eswatini Defence Force recruitment process starting from Saturday at Mafutseni in Nkundla. It's an announcement that was made by Umbutfo Hashugile Mota on Monday.
Lalela sikutshele tindzaba lethu kuye enkosini. Sona uthokandaba labativako uyawujoyina embuthweni wasemasotsheni abaphelele etinkundleni tabo magumbi lamane livela kangwane baphelele netigcebhezane tabo tebuve kusuka eminyakeni lelishumi nesiphohlongo kuyawufika eminyakeni lengemashumi lamathathu nesihlanu baphelele etinkundleni tabo hayi endlungulu yasemasotsheni. Usho njalo Mswati lomnyama kulabalithu londungandaba wakithi wasembelebeleni ngilondungandaba nemambalangani wakithi wasemambondweni Mswati khawula abantu ngemvimbelo bokhala abantu nangemnyatheliso uyatibona nemambalana athi inhloko temadunathi yakhu ticunga nemambala edlamini besethi kuyethi yabikelana kuye kwaqunga nemambala atabonye kwasekazulu uhohone nemambala ngolfunga ngilabemukako nemambala belfunga bengunkwini emaswati umkhokha nemambala lobhunyele bafana basemasotsheni ukunle mbontho wathi batanqanisa abanqanise balitsine emagumeni abonini nemambala Mswati ngibevile bahite labathi ngumagodolwane ingabe bona baphana kangakanani emagumeni abonini wini waphakathi
The Army Commander Mashigilisana Fagutse assured the public that the recruitment process will be conducted in line with the directives of His Majesty King Mswati III.
Siyethemba lo msebenzi njengoba uwengwenyama welive wonke umuntu utawuhlonipha ngabe lisotsha ngabe akasilo.
The recruitment process will commence this Saturday at Mafutsini Nkundla till November 29 and Babane West Nkundla starting from 2 p.m. and other recruitment processes for remaining Nkundla will be announced according to the Army. Reporting Samgalsiwe Khoza, Nokwane.
The Minister of Tinkundla and Regional Development says capacitating members of parliament with all the national budget processes will help them to execute their oversight role effectively. The minister was speaking during a budget workshop for Lubombo politicians, which was held in Sitegi.
The meeting was organized by the Ministry of Finance in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Service and Tinkhundla. It seeks to capacitate politicians in the Lubombo region about the national budget processes before the final budget is delivered in Parliament. The Minister of Tinkhundla, Skhumbuzo Dlamini, provided insights into the Tinkhundla system's role in fostering community development and promoting service delivery.
Yasetinkhundleni lofaka kathikindweni inkundla MP wokucobo sebatawuqonza ukuthi yini emaphakelo lokho ke kuyenda ukuthi basakhuluma basasebenta bakhone ukuplana kahle baplanele lapho labathunywe khona.
The Minister of Public Service, Mabulala Maseko, discussed ways to improve public service delivery.
Besingacela ke vele ukuthi nakhona sinalama projects asibuke projects la tasikicitela hayi nje project ukuthi ngobe ilula yona ngisoza ngiyathi ukuthi nangifakile ngishaya itikele ngitambaye basho njalo batambona singasebenza kanti nje iglory esikhashanyana.
Lukongolweni constituency member of Parliament Joseph Souza says such forums are important because they enlighten parliamentarians on the budget processes, which will help them in adequately executing their.
Next time, sebasivakashelele tinkundleni lababaka budgeting. But also sisapitali ngenya lufakayo ukuthi nini basegongolweni nifuna ini.
Reporting, I am Tembelihle Makuchwa at Stegi.
The Ministry of Tourism Principal Secretary Kangeziwe Mabuza says Eswatini is making processes in implementing its climate action commitments. The PS was speaking during a stakeholder validation engagement for the country's nationally determined contributions to a report.
The Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs hosted a stakeholder validation meeting on Monday on the nationally determined contributions that report. The Principal Secretary, Kangeziwe Mabuza, says the country is doing well in meeting its targets under the nationally determined contribution, which is part of Eswatini's response to climate change.
Usibambisile ngemali, wasitholela imali, sakhona ukuthi sicashe bochwepheshe. Lebe basisita bahamba bangena la tinhlangothini basitholela le information kodwa ke sicela nekusho ukuthi siyaticapha silivela kangwanele ukuthi inqumbi yalomsebenzi ikakhulu lokucaphiya kakhulu kube ngawe emaswati lasatshengisile ukuthi likhona sekanalo.
She says the report reflects the country's continued efforts to cut emissions, build resiliency, and align with global climate goals. She further emphasized the importance of working with stakeholders in refining the report to ensure that it represents Eswatini's progress and future plans clearly. Whereas the United Nations Development Programme President Representative Hendrik Franklin uploaded Eswatini's efforts.
UNDP has been working hand in hand with the Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs to make sure that the platforms are there, to support the process, recruiting consultants that have done the technical work. A lot of the work has been done by national experts and institutions, and very importantly also the consultation processes, including all segments of society across sectors, but also youth, women, persons with disabilities, both in rural and urban areas. So we find the process to be very inclusive, and we're very excited that Eswatini will be among the first countries in Africa to submit its climate action plan in COP30 in Brazil.
The NCD 3.0 report is expected to guide the country's climate strategies in the coming years. Reporting Samgalsiwe Koza, Mbabane.
With Business Eswatini raising strong objections to the employment bill proposing a ban on triangular employment, a practice where workers are employed by one company but supervised and work under another. The Chief Executive, Inathi Dlamini, warns that this could result in the loss of about 22,000 jobs. The Honourable Minister for Labour and Social Security, Honourable Philip Telezi, has stepped in to explain why this bill is critical, especially at a time when employment creation is a national priority.
They are under the insinuation that labour brokerage, once it's abolished, it will also nullify subcontracting, which is something that's far from the truth. Subcontracting will continue as it's been happening, but will only be trying to do away with the triangular form of employment because we've had many concerns along the streets in Parliament. There has been 2 resolutions by the House of Assembly on that issue, and for us is to comply with that. That is why we've come up with this bill to make sure that we get rid of labour brokers, because the main complaint is that workers' rights are not protected there. Once you raise a complaint at your workplace, the one who owns that establishment has no obligation to make sure that all your expectations are met in terms of working conditions and terms of the form of employment that you are hired on. Other issues that are contained in the bill are issues of the forms of employment. We have workers that are being exploited, unfortunately, in some sectors where they are hired on casual basis or contractual, instead of contractual basis, on contractual basis, which are short term instead of long term, and they cannot plan for their future. They cannot take loans. They cannot, commit themselves in any financial obligations because their terms of employment are not that favorable. So that's another area that the bill seeks to address, to make sure that if you're doing a work that appears permanent, be permanently employed or be bound in a long-term contract.
In a bold move to boost transparency and strengthen supervision of the non-banking financial sector, the Financial Services Regulatory Authority has launched the Bank Supervision Application version 5, a powerful tool that is designed to enhance compliance as well as to enable real-time monitoring of non-banking institutions.
To regulate, we need data which is provided. We use this system to get the data from the FSPs. They submit on the system. Then we also use the system to regulate and supervise. So given that there are developments, we are always forever trying to enhance our supervisory work, our supervisory tools. So now we are migrating from the version 4 to a version 5, which will allow us to be better placed to deal with the data that is submitted by FSPs, to give us far better insights, to be able to have a 360-degree view.
Ngamiso Mavuso, IT manager at the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, unpacks the new application.
We expect that we will collect more information, generate more insights, and also these insights would assist us in proactive decision making, which we have an area which we have been lacking on. It will also allow us to introduce what is called risk-based supervision, meaning that there will be indicators that we will be looking into, monitoring now and again. We can see actually what everyone is doing at the same time. However, because on version 4, we had to carry out the supervision physically, meaning visiting all FSPs. With this system, we will have that 360-degree view at any given time. So we know what the risk each FSP is facing, and we intervene on time as well.
The Financial Services Regulatory Authority oversees the work of approximately 400 non-banking financial institutions, and they have indicated that the innovation is a critical step towards enhanced compliance and transparency. Reporting, Nelson Langamandla, Vominkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
The Supreme Court of Appeal has ruled that all cases involving Eswatini Med Principal Officer Peter Samora Similani and Eswatini Med should be consolidated and brought before the court at once. This happened on Monday when the court was expected to hear Similani's application, in which he wants the court to review the judgment of High Court Judge Mamsi Dlamini that barred Similani and Eswatini Med board chairperson Semi Dlamini from performing their duties at Eswatini Med. Eswatini TV reporter Fortune Langamandla also included a report in which the Crown opposed an application for a review of a judgment by Manzini Principal Magistrate David Kumalo, who had ordered that the accused in the case of the shooting and killing of hip-hop artist Kiernan aka Forbes, as well as his friend Tebelo Tibbs Motsuane, be extradited to their home country.
Following the judgment of High Court Judge Mamsi Dlamini, Eswatini Med, through its chairperson Bheki Mazia, wanted the judgment to be executed. However, Eswatini Med Principal Officer Samora Similani rushed to the Supreme Court of Appeal to file an application for the review of the judge's ruling. when the matter was supposed to proceed before the Supreme Court of Appeal bench, which consisted of Justice Pesha Dlamini, Justice Sabelo Matsebula, as well as Justice M. Van der Welt, it could not proceed. Justice Dlamini Simelani's lawyer, Advocate Mandel, and Eswatini Met's lawyer, Advocate Samantha Martin, whether they believed the matter was ready to proceed. Simelani's lawyer argued that it was ready, but Advocate Martin disagreed, saying the matter could not proceed and that Simelani's legal team had already been informed that it was not yet ripe for hearing. Justice Dlamini agreed that the case was not ready to proceed. He pointed out that there were other related cases involving Simelane and Eswatini Met that also needed to be brought before the Supreme Court of Appeal. He recommended that all these cases be consolidated and heard together. The judge advised both parties' legal representatives to meet and discuss the way forward. When the court resumed, Simelane's lawyer informed the judges that both legal teams had agreed that all cases involving Simelane and Eswatini Met should be placed before the Chief Justice for judicial case management. The court then ordered that the matter be heard early next year. In a separate matter concerning the shooting and killing of hip-hop artist Keenan aka Forbes and his friend celebrity chef Tebelo Tibbs Motswane, the Crown in its head of arguments filed requesting that court dismiss the application for a review of a ruling made by Mazini Principal Magistrate David Khumalo, who had ordered that the accused be extradited to their home country, South Africa. The accused in this case are Siyabonga Gezani Ndimande and his brother Malus Dave Ndimande. The Crown argued that the first step is for the High Court to determine whether the application for extradition was properly brought before Manzini Principal Magistrate. The Crown also revealed that the accused had raised complaint about the manner in which the extradition application was brought in court. The Crown further argued that even if the accused have failed to raise this before Senior Magistrate Khumalo or in their review application, should they raise it now, the Crown will present new evidence to ensure justice is done, since new developments have emerged under South African law. In their application to review Magistrate Khumalo's ruling, the accused complained that the judgment delivered in August 2024 ordering their extradition was not handed down in open court. However, the Crown maintained that Magistrate Khumalo did hand down his judgment in open court. The accused also argued that they will not be safe if extradited to their home country. The Crown dismissed this, pointing out that the South African National Prosecuting Authority had guaranteed their safety and even submitted affidavit from KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, reporting Fortune Dlangamandla, High Court.
In our sports news, the Eswatini national team women's under-20 coach Atwell Lulu says they are ready to pull a surprise when they meet South Africa in the FIFA Women's Under-20 World Cup qualifiers. Lulu was speaking during the team's media play, or rather the team's media day that was held at the Technical Centre in Lobamba.
The Eswatini national team will face off against their South African counterparts in the first round of the FIFA Women's World Cup qualifiers. The team has been hard in training, which gives the team's head coach Atwell Lulu enough confidence. As he says, they can cause an upset since the group of players are not only ready, but can make the country proud.
This is the team that will represent the country well, I believe. Ngithemba lokho. Ngiyathemba le team lena ngiyo letawo. And the success of the team there, it means the success yesterday in the near future. So we're building this team not just for this level, but we're building a team that will, in 2-3 years' time, it will be Samhlekas. That is the women's senior team. So this is the building block for our football, as far as women football is concerned. So Mlengatemba would see the team lena ngiyo letawo Eswatini deliver in the long run.
But Kusile, who's the team's captain, agrees with the coach that the belief in the players is at its best.
Khona la singafika khona lana abadlali bakhombisa bayayithanda lemvu akusho ukuthi bafostiwe nokuthi yabo babe la but ukuthi bayayithanda and bayatimisela sonke nje siyatimisela uqinisile nathi siyadithemba asithenja uncoach kuphela.
The first leg will be played at the Somhlolo National Stadium, with the second leg to be played in South Africa. The World Cup will be played next year, September, in Poland. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports News, I am Patizom Sibi, Lobamba.
Well, that's the end of our news. We'll go for a net break. We'll be back shortly.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. It's 21 minutes past 7. You're still tuned into Eswatini television. Kusile breakfast show. Right about now, we segue and we shift gears. We look at news making headlines. Internationally, we will look at this one. Addressing the Security Council, Jean-Pierre Lacroix said, peacekeeping is not a luxury. It is a lifeline for millions who count on it for a future without fear. Over 60,000 peacekeepers representing 115 member states bravely carry out its vital work in 11 missions, making peacekeeping the UN's largest and most visible activity in the field. He also said, rather than retreat, we must use the expertise and valuable lessons from nearly 8 decades of peacekeeping to use these valuable tools to respond to legitimate expectations that the peoples hold towards the fulfillment of the Charter.
I now give the floor to Mr. Jean-Pierre Lacroix.
Thank you, Mr. President. I welcome this opportunity to brief the Security Council, and I thank the Republic of Korea in coordination with Denmark and Pakistan for organizing today's open debate. Let me first sincerely thank member states, civil society, and others who contributed to the review on the future of peace operations. We have received more than 60 submissions. Each submission is being carefully reviewed. Extensive consultation and transparency underpin this review process, and along with our partner in this process, the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, we will continue to ensure opportunities for engagement in the coming month. When I spoke to this council in July, I highlighted the important role peacekeeping missions play in supporting lasting political solutions to end conflict, as well as the indispensable role of the Security Council and the power it has when it speaks and acts collectively in support of a political process. Mr. President, peacekeeping is not a luxury. It is a lifeline for millions who count on it for a future without fear. Over 60,000 peacekeepers, representing 15 member states, bravely carry out its vital work in 11 missions, making peacekeepers one of the UN's largest and most visible activity in the field. I salute the women and men deployed in our missions who on a daily basis make a difference by protecting civilians, clearing mines and explosive remnants of war, patrolling villages and towns, monitoring ceasefires and mediating conflict at the local level and preventing conflicts from spilling out of control. And I pay tribute to those peacekeepers who paid the ultimate price. As we look at the world, achieving lasting political solutions seems increasingly challenging. The level of active conflict has risen to alarming numbers, with 61 active conflicts in 2024, the highest number since 1946, according to the Uppsala Conflict Data Program. Conflicts have become protracted, involving more actors and often proxy forces, making negotiated solutions more difficult to achieve. This does not mean we will not continue to pursue them. In such an uncertain future, we are likely to see more civilians at risk and in need of protection. It means the need for peace operations increases, potentially alongside other types of operations, including peace enforcement. It also means the context for deployment may be more uncertain and for success harder to achieve. Yet, as we have started the second quarter of the 21st century, rather than retreat, we must use the expertise and the valuable lessons from nearly 8 decades of peacekeeping to use this valuable tool to respond to the legitimate expectations that the peoples hold towards the fulfillment of the Charter. But we need not wait for the peace operations review to continue proactively doing our utmost to strengthen the effectiveness of UN peacekeeping. Before speaking further to what is needed for the future of peace operations, I would like to briefly convey a few examples of what we already achieved this year through our implementation of Action for Peacekeeping Plus, or A4P Plus. First, peacekeeping missions continue to promote political solutions to conflict at the regional, national and local levels. In the Central African Republic, for example, MINUSCA is supporting the government to take forward the 19th of April agreement between the government and 2 signatory armed groups that return to the peace process by supporting disarmament and demobilization of the Retour, Réclamation et Réhabilitation, that is 3R movement, and the Unité pour la paix en Centrafrique, the UPC movement, thus marking a major milestone in the continuing peace process. Second, to improve mission planning, we recently endorsed new guidelines on mission concepts and mission plans. They are designed to improve clarity of strategy and enable missions to deliver on their mandates more effectively. Enhanced planning is critical to our effectiveness on the ground, and only the more so in the context of the liquidity crisis and geopolitical uncertainty. Third, to ensure we have the right capabilities and mindset, we continue to take forward the Uniform Gender Parity Strategy, that is UGPS. All categories of personnel deployed in the field continue to meet their UGPS targets, except for military contingents. But we keep working on that particular category. Recognizing the importance of continuous improvement, we recently conducted a review of the UGPS strategy. The review identified priority actions to take forward, including expanding the network of uniformed women peacekeepers and supporting uniformed leadership cadres. I would like to take this opportunity to request that member states put forward more female candidates for senior military appointments. We are also refining and augmenting specialized training. The Triangular Partnership Program, that is TPP, added new training modules on counter-IED and explosive hazards. TPP and the United Nations Mine Action Service, UNMAS, are also mainstreaming counter-IED considerations across engineering and medical courses. And this is only one demonstration out of many of how far we have come in systematically mitigating the threat of explosive ordnance. This speaks to my fourth point on improving our accountability to peacekeepers, including to improve their safety and security. Peacekeeping operations, often working with UNMAS, are mitigating the risks of explosive ordnance to peacekeepers and local populations. In South Sudan, for example, UNMAS cleared approximately 220 anti-personnel mines, more than a dozen anti-vehicle mines, and nearly 500 cluster munitions, and over 5,200 other EOs in UNMIS's area of responsibility. These clearance operations freed up approximately 2.6 million square meters, including agricultural areas and key roadways for local communities. Fifth, we continue to do our utmost to uphold the highest standards of conduct and discipline. We continue pre-deployment training on conduct and discipline for all uniformed personnel, as well as in-mission training. We provide avenues for victims to come forward, investigate allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse, and when allegations are substantiated, we take the requisite action. From November 2024 to April 2025, that is the last 6 months, we repatriated 17 uniformed personnel on disciplinary grounds. And together with concerned member states, we have also actively sought solutions to address the too many pending paternity and child support claims, so that children fathered by peacekeepers and their mothers can have closure and assistance. Given time considerations, I do not want to be exhaustive in my remarks today on our most recent progress on strengthening peacekeeping. Rather, in the coming days, we will provide member states with a comprehensive report on recent progress and challenges implementing A4P+. Mr. President, turning back to our vision for the future of peacekeeping, what I believe is required and what many of you have echoed during the consultation process is a UN that is capable and ready to respond through missions that are adaptable and tailored to the needs on the ground, guided by strong political strategies and leveraging the tools, capacities and expertise of the organization and its partners. Based on your submissions and in furtherance of the ongoing reform process of Action for Peacekeeping Plus, I would like to highlight the following. First, peace operations need to have clear and prioritized mandates. That is something that is often repeated, based on in-depth assessment of needs and commensurate resources and capabilities. The voice of host states, as well as other relevant stakeholders, including troop and police contributing countries, regional actors, and local communities, should be clearly reflected in the mandate. The availability and sources of data that can be brought together to more effectively assess situations on the ground and predict possible responses based on lessons learned has notably increased. We must harness the capacities of digital technologies and artificial intelligence to support the analysis of data, as well as to assess the effectiveness of our responses through time. Pursuing political solutions to conflict, protecting civilians, supporting the strengthening of accountable governance entities, the promotion and protection of human rights, and the advancement of the women, peace and security agenda should remain priorities. This must be accompanied by our sustained and uncompromising efforts to uphold the Secretary General's zero-tolerance policy on SEA. UN peace operations are a manifestation of the Charter's purposes and principles to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war and to uphold the dignity and worth of the human person. Wherever our peace operations are deployed, even where we do not have an explicit protection mandate, populations rightly expect to be protected by the UN. This protection comes in many forms, from the presence and engagement by military or police peacekeepers to political dialogue, advocacy, and reporting by civilian staff, national and international alike. The UN's ability to deliver on the imperative to protect people is very often the benchmark by which we're judged. But we should not be indefinitely responsible for the protection of populations. This is why the pursuit of political solutions must remain at the heart of what we do and how we can more sustainably and cost-effectively save succeeding generations from war. This reality carries important implications as we reflect on the future of all forms of peace operations, from how we plan, design, mandate, resource operations to how we implement their mandates on the ground. Second, we must continue working to demonstrate the difference we make on the ground through the results we deliver. We need to enhance how we monitor and report on the impact of peacekeeping, including wherever possible by identifying measurable targets. A4P+ monitoring, for example, is measuring and reporting on our efforts to improve the effectiveness of peacekeeping. Tools like the Comprehensive Planning Performance Assessment System, or CPAS, are also notable by measuring progress towards implementing Council mandates. But we must go further by conducting population-based perception surveys, which will bring us as close as possible to measuring impact through the systematic evaluation of the views of our beneficiaries. Actually, some missions have already engaged in those surveys. Third, conflicts are fluid situations and priorities and needs will change. Such changes must be monitored and analyzed on an ongoing basis by all stakeholders so that mission mandates and operation can change accordingly. This requires greater flexibility in how missions are managed and resourced, how they can use their resources, including from a human resources point of view. Fourth, we recognize that complex situations, such as the ones in which we operate, require multifaceted responses. This means that a multiplicity of actors might be needed to work in synergy to achieve the highest degree of impact, either because of different skills, capacities, and added value, or because of political rationales. Therefore, partnership, particularly with regional organizations and with the African Union where it concerns peace and security on the African continent, at the political, operational level must remain high on the agenda, and the UN must maintain the core capabilities, relationships, and expertise to engage with a range of partners and in different capacities and contexts. These priorities will help prepare peacekeeping for the future, and they also align with the work stream under UNAT, where within the Secretariat we are seeking efficiencies, reviewing the implementation of mandates, and exploring program realignment. To advance durable political solutions that enable peacekeeping to withdraw without a relapse into conflict requires the strong, unified, and ongoing support of this Council through the adoption of clear prioritized mandates, active political engagement, and statements of support. These must be matched by the payment of assessed contribution in full and on time. Our ability to keep the peace requires it. So together, let us seize this moment to shape the peace operations that are fit for the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
And to these now, nitrate from fertilizer and manure befouls countless waterways and kitchen taps across the U.S. But unlike other big polluters from petroleum to plastics, big agriculture has largely avoided responsibility for its dirty footprint. In no state is an arguably cleaner than Iowa, where the multi-billion-dollar corn industrial complex of farmers, food processors, tractor makers, chemical companies, ethanol producers, and their lobbyists reigns supreme.
We have been struggling with high nitrate levels in our source water.
It could be farm runoff, fertilization, number of things.
Nearly every Iowa county in the Hawkeye State is battling against manure being released into their water.
11.12, that is over the limit.
Treatment plants across central Iowa are having a hard time treating it.
We have what was at one time the largest nitrate removal facility in the world, and unfortunately even that wasn't able to keep up with the level of nitrate that we're seeing in the rivers.
We have beaches in Iowa, but they're closed. They have algae, they have bacteria.
The lake, it's really showing up green right now. It's really sad.
Nitrogen pollution is a big problem in Iowa. It's dangerous for people and for the environment, but there's also a whole other side of this story that's frankly more troubling. It's about the big and powerful vested interests who have really allowed the contamination on such a wide scale.
I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone that there's pressure on legislators and government officials from special interest groups.
The status quo in Iowa is working for some people and not working well at all for many others.
I think in 2007, we were made aware that our nitrate levels were higher than normal. Everybody is connected to a farmer. Everybody is connected with somebody who has had cancer. I'd say 4 or 5 people for sure. Everybody knows that amount who have died of cancer. And it's becoming creepy. I'm Steve Pick. I'm in Remsen, Iowa. I'm 67 years old and I've been here most of my life. I was a city clerk and utilities for about 34 years. There has to be some correlation between nitrate levels and cancer.
Iowa's cancer rate has been climbing in near lockstep with the rising use of nitrogen on farms for decades. Scientists, though, aren't sure if the correlation is causative or merely coincidental. What we do know is that age-adjusted, Iowa has the nation's fastest growing and second highest cancer rate overall after Kentucky, and is one of only 2 states in the U.S. where the cancer rate is still growing at all.
Iowa used to be sort of this marshy swampland, and to make it as productive as we have, we've essentially plumbed a lot of our fields so that we can get the water off the land and make the land more amenable to crop production.
Iowa is really among the most heavily modified landscapes in the entire country. Starting with European settlers, it was literally carved up into squares for individual farming families. With the endless green fields, it's hard to see how farming in Iowa could have a negative impact. But if you look a little closer, you realize it's like any other major industry, driven by market forces entirely indifferent to ecological and human health. Most of what is grown goes into animal feed and ethanol for fuel. Corn yields have risen enormously in the last 50 years. To achieve that productivity, the state's farmers spread nearly 4 billion pounds of nitrogen from fertilizer and manure on Iowa's 13 million acres of corn every year. Many in the scientific community are worried.
This is essentially our sample intake lab. So those are treated seeds. That's how we do agriculture these days. And that seed is colorful because it's painted with pesticides. We spray on there an insecticide, a fungicide, maybe an nematicide. And this is something we spent a lot of time studying. These coatings, once the seed goes in the ground, if there's rainfall, these do get washed away. Farmers just will buy what they're being sold. This is what their local representative will say is, this is your seed for this year, and they'll just use it. There are challenges when it comes to water quality, and I think concerns over the challenges that might be there for public health as well.
This is our well field here that supplies our water. We had one bad well. Well number 8 was extremely high.
To get the nitrate out of the water, Steve Pick organized the community of Remsen, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy almost 100 acres of farmland above the well field. They replaced the rows of corn and soybeans that were growing there with native prairie grasses, and the deep roots of those grasses successfully absorbed much of the pollution. Steve Pick won a Clean Water Award as nitrate levels in Remsen's wells plummeted about 40% in just a few years. But then it was all cut down.
$15,000 worth of seed of planting all this and wildflowers to be just thrown away, to be sprayed. It was pretty disheartening.
Starting in 2010, more conservative politicians came into power across the state, and the project was effectively killed. Steve Pick was fired in 2012. A few years later, in 2015, nitrate levels had shot back up. This is when the story gets really interesting. Iowa's Department of Natural Resources sent a scientist to investigate the rising levels of nitrate in Remsen. That investigator identified the Tentinger cattle feedlot on the edge of town as the source of the pollution.
It comes from there, down through this creek, down that way between the ball fields, and then weaves through town, through Beck Park, and eventually ends up in our well field.
Emails show that the DNR's chief of compliance at the time, Barbara Lynch, closed the investigation to avoid political blowback. DNR records show residents repeatedly complained about the farm's manure flowing through town, but state investigations were shut down at least twice. By 2017, Remsen's shallow wells were so filled with nitrate, they had to actually be turned off. Remsen now has a $10 million water plant to treat deeper wells and much higher water bills.
Nobody really questions it at all. They just live with it.
chemical interference like that is not unusual in Iowa. In fact, what happened in Remsen was a microcosm of how agricultural interests wield extraordinary power over the Department of Natural Resources and other state institutions to protect the ag industry, endangering public health.
I'm Claire Ruby. I work for the Department of Environmental Science and Sustainability here at Drake. For 20 years before that, I worked for the Department of Natural Resources of Iowa.
In 2019, Claire Ruby co-wrote a research paper that was led by Chris Jones of the University of Iowa.
The 2019 paper, oh boy.
That report examined the waterways around Remsen in northwest Iowa, where livestock feedlots have proliferated in recent decades alongside a leap in crop farming. Nitrate is a byproduct of both.
What the paper showed was that there was a doubling of nutrient application in those watersheds, leading to significantly higher nitrate concentrations in the surface water. It's completely unnecessary. Folks aren't just applying what is needed to grow those crops. I discovered that there was a meeting about this with a number of the powerful ag players. I looked through the door and I saw on the screen a PowerPoint that talked about activist scientists. And things really went downhill after that.
At that meeting was a group called the Iowa Farm Bureau.
Advocating for family farms on issues raised by local farmers, the Iowa Farm Bureau fits the true definition of a grassroots movement.
The Iowa Farm Bureau projects a wholesome image, but essentially it's a lobbying machine for the big ag businesses in Iowa. These guys don't look exactly like the typical farmer. Established in 1918, the Iowa Farm Bureau includes all kinds of investors and bankers and lawyers and goes far beyond farmers. It has unusually deep pockets for an industry trade group as well, thanks to corporate profits that it earns from an insurance subsidiary that's very large. The IFB is so influential that it was able to insert entire passages from its own publications without any citation into an early draft of the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy, the state's voluntary blueprint for reducing nitrogen and phosphorus emissions. This regulation-free rulebook is what allows the agricultural industry to operate on a volume imperative. The system involves farmers who are incentivized to maximize harvests by huge demand for livestock feed and also the federal mandate to turn corn into ethanol for auto fuel. The federal government basically indemnifies them against losses by subsidizing crop insurance.
I worked about 20 years for the Iowa Farm Bureau as the Director of Research and Commodity Services. I was quite involved with some of the discussions on the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. It's really just how much nitrogen do we need to grow a bushel of corn. Right now in Iowa, we do about 1 pound of nitrogen per bushel of corn. That's highly efficient. In 1980, we were 1.5 pounds of nitrogen. Nitrogen is the most expensive input I have on this farm. I don't want to waste it. Now, could it be done more efficiently? Theoretically, yes.
Applying blanket fertilizer has become the norm for modern farming systems, but some believe there are better and cleaner ways to do it. Iowa State University agronomy professor Matt Liebman founded and ran the Marsden Farm project from 2002 until retiring just a couple years ago.
If you look at what's down below the oats here, you can see alfalfa plants that were planted at the same time as the oats. So corn likes to grow after alfalfa, and you can grow that corn with less fertilizer after alfalfa because roots can move more quickly through the soil to greater depth and explore the soil for more water and nutrients.
Liebman proved that by rotating corn and soybean with alfalfa and grains, such as oats, farmers could actually earn more money while using 85% less nitrogen fertilizer.
The principles and practices that you're seeing out here are well known for decades, for centuries. Most farmers have been moved toward a financial situation where they're trying to maximize their gross revenue. And if they find shortfalls in their profit because input costs are high or market values are low, the government, through your subsidized insurance, helps them maintain profitability. Because we don't assign a cost for externalities for what happens downwind, downstream, and downhill, the production economics favor the high use of inputs and the high use of farming practices that don't necessarily translate into good environmental and human health outcomes.
Some folks will say regulation is the way, but regulation is a real dirty word here in Iowa. And, folks don't want to have that conversation. I am not blaming farmers. This is the system as it stands. This is what in the U.S. we call a food production system.
I would argue the Farm Bureau system is the envy of the world relative to getting quality agricultural input and involvement of producers in ag production policy. And so when we talk about regulations, no, I'm a fan of set out voluntary guidelines and make sure this system rewards sound economics.
The Iowa Farm Bureau has been campaigning for years to be sure that farmers do not have to follow strict regulations. That has allowed environmental policies to remain secondary to economics in the state. Lobbying records in the state legislature show the IFB has consistently opposed and tried to repeal any measures that could take up farmland for other purposes, such as solar panels and environmental restoration. While Big Ag prefers to maintain the status quo, new science suggests a rethink might be wise.
There's been some concern that maybe that 10 milligrams per liter standard is not health protective enough. And there's been plenty of science that has started to find associations between nitrate in drinking water and chronic health impacts like bladder cancer, colorectal cancer, thyroid cancer, and birth defects. So here in Iowa, we've got communities that are routinely drinking levels of nitrate where people are wondering, is this truly safe even though the EPA tells us it's below the standard? Back in 2010, the EPA acknowledged that there was new data around nitrate and chronic health effects that suggested that they needed a new health assessment. But here we are in 2025, and we have not completed that health assessment.
Today, I'm pleased to make the largest deregulatory announcement in U.S. history.
For years, federal environmental laws and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency have really stood in as nature's last line of defense in Iowa and elsewhere. Now, though, the current administration wants to disband EPA's Science and Research Division, the only branch that does these risk assessments, as President Trump seeks to slash EPA's budget by more than half.
What happens downstream of us, this just kind of keeps continuing and continuing and continuing all the way to the Gulf, really, where you see the hypoxia zone. This is a whole interconnected system. This is not isolated to us.
Why do the fish kills keep happening? It's death by 1,000 cuts. We just keep doing this over and over. So it's not just a drinking water problem, it's an ecosystem problem. But we've gotten used to it. It starts to feel normal.
Seems like the bigger the operations around here get, the more they're reliant on chemicals. I'd like to see a happy medium in there, but it seems like it's just going way too far out of whack. Looks pretty clear, but I still wouldn't drink it.
Right, that's how we conclude what would have been a section of our international news. But then that brings us to what would be a home stretch of the Kusile Breakfast Show. But do wait for us and Esfiso Umala as we come back and conclude what has been a discourse of the day, and then an interesting discourse that is, where we were discussing a lot of topics and also giving you an insight of how the day will be looking like today, just after the break.
This is Subsidy, the game show where we talk about government-sponsored financial incentives. Our first question: which of these sectors benefits from government subsidies? Agriculture, education, transportation, or all of the above?
Oh, that's easy.
The answer is all of the above.
He's right, but there's more to the story. Sometimes governments support their people and businesses through a policy tool that brings down prices called subsidies. They do this to create long-term benefits for the economy or to help pay for things that the market isn't providing but that people cannot live without. Subsidies can also be a helpful tool when an economy is hit by crisis. Let me show you what I mean. Take housing. Everyone needs a roof over their head. Unfortunately, not everyone can afford it, but governments can help by subsidizing rent for poorer citizens or building more low-cost homes. Education subsidies, like discounted tuition or free textbooks, can make schooling affordable for more people. As a result, people are more skilled and can get better jobs. Even something as small as bringing down the cost of public transportation yields benefits for the environment. Not to mention, it gives people more options about where they can live and work. But not all subsidies are helpful. Some have downsides. Oh, this is me.
Doors open.
Take a look at one of the most common subsidies: energy. In a lot of countries, fuel subsidies can mean consumers are paying less for fuel than it actually costs to produce. And that doesn't even reflect the environmental cost. Look at coal. Burning coal produces electricity, but it also pumps carbon into the air, which causes pollution and contributes to climate change. If the price tag on coal doesn't include these environmental costs, companies will always choose cheap, subsidized coal over more expensive clean energy sources. On the flip side, when governments subsidize green energy sources, they make the clean choice the more affordable option. At the IMF, we support these types of reforms that get energy prices right and tax pollution, especially when the added revenue goes towards programs that can help the poor. Basically, making sure that subsidies do what's best for people, the economy, and Mother Earth.
All right, it's 2 minutes before 8, I beg your pardon. Thank you so much for staying with us. This has been Kusile Breakfast Show, the Tuesday edition with Sunny Boy. Thank you so much, Sunny Boy, for helping us hold it down today.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Mguni. What an interesting day we had today. And also, just a quick reminder, it's back to school for Bantwana Besikolo namhlanje, Kyle, event Eswatini, and it's last mile, which is the third term, and from 5 we'll be writing soon external examinations. So good luck to all those that are back to school today.
I don't like the term luck, because luck
favors the brave.
It tends to negate the element of preparation. So, September labo lata bebatlungisele ngalokufanele phatha khona ukuthi baphumelele bonke abantu besikolo siyabakhuthaza ukuthi abadadishe batali emakhaya bayikhumbule responsibility ukuthi bantwana kudadisha kwabo batsinga i-supervision ngasiboke batali kuphela ama-guardian lamanye lakhona nebathishele esikolweni bekuphele nje nekudlala abo-TikToks vile ukuthi sekunabothishela abadlala ema-TikTok.
Esikhundleni bafundisa.
Otherwise, this has been the Tuesday edition of Kusile Breakfast Show. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.